What's up, guys? Welcome to September 14th as we dive into Ezra chapter 6, verse 14. The temple's dedication. The temple was finally finished as had been commanded by the God of Israel and decreed by Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes, the kings of Persia. The temple was completed on March 12th during the 6th year of King Darius' reign. The temple of God was then dedicated with great joy by the people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the people who had returned from exile. During the dedication ceremony for the temple of God, 100 young bulls, 200 rams, and 400 male lambs were sacrificed, and 12 male goats were presented as a sin offering for the 12 tribes of Israel. Then the priests and Levites were divided into their various divisions to serve at the temple of God in Jerusalem, as prescribed in the book of Moses. Celebration of Passover. On April 21st, the returned exiles celebrated Passover. The priests and Levites had purified themselves and were ceremonially clean. So they slaughtered the Passover lamb for all the returned exiles, for their fellow priests, and for themselves. The Passover meal was eaten by the people of Israel who had returned from exile and by the others in the land who had turned from their corrupt practices to worship the Lord, the God of Israel. Then they celebrated the festival of unleavened bread for 7 days. There was great joy throughout the land, because the Lord had caused the king of Assyria to be favored to them, so that he helped them to rebuild the temple of God, the God of Israel. Opposition under King Xerxes. During years later, when Xerxes began his reign, the enemies of Judah wrote a letter of accusations against the people of Judah and Jerusalem. Esther's story took place in Persia during the reign of King Xerxes. Esther chapter 1. The king's banquet. These events happened in the days of King Xerxes, who reigned over 127 provinces stretched from India to Ethiopia. At that time, Xerxes ruled his empire from his royal throne at the fortress of Susa. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. He invited all the military officers to Persia and Media, as well as the princesses and nobles of the provinces. The celebration lasted 180 days, a tremendous display of the opulent wealth of his empire and the pomp and splendor of his majesty. When it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people, from the greatest to the least, who were in the fortress of Susa. It lasted for 7 days and was held in the courtyard of the palace garden. The courtyard was beautifully decorated with white cotton curtains and blue hangings, which were fastened with white linen cords and purple ribbons to silver rings embedded in marble pillars. Gold and silver couches stood on a masqued pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Drinks were served in gold goblets of many designs, and there was an abundance of royal wine, reflecting the king's generosity. But by edict of the king, no limits were placed on the drinking, for the king had instructed all his palace officials to serve each man as much as he wanted. At that time, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. Queen Vashti deposed. On the 7th day of the feast, when King Xerxes was in high spirits because of the wine, he told the 7 eunuchs who attended him, Mahuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zathar, and Karsus to bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze at her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman. But when they conveyed the king's order to Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the king furious, and he burned with anger. He immediately consulted with his wise advisors, who knew all the Persian laws and customs, for he always asked their advice. The names of these were Kashina, Shathar, Admatha, Tarshish, Mirith, Marsina, and Memucan, 7 nobles of Persia and Media. They met with the king regularly and held the highest positions in the empire. What must be done to Queen Vashti? The king demanded. What penalty does the law provide for a queen who refuses to obey the king's orders properly sent through his initiates? Memucan answered the king and his nobles. Queen Shatai has wronged not only the king but also every noble and citizen throughout your empire. Women everywhere will begin to despise their husbands when they learn that Queen Vashti has refused to appear before the king. Before this day is out, the wives of all the king's nobles throughout Persia and Media will hear what the queen did and will start treating their husbands the same way. There will be no end to their contempt and anger. So if it pleases the king, we suggest that you issue a written decree, a law of Persians and Medes that cannot be revoked. Issue order that Queen Vashti be forever banished from the presence of King Ahasuerus, and that the king should choose another queen more worthy than she. Then this decree is published throughout the king's vast empire. Husbands everywhere, whatever their rank, will receive proper respect from their wives. The king and his nobles throughout this made good sense, so he followed Memucan's counsel. He sent letters to all parts of the empire, so each province in its own scripture and language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler of his own home and should say whatever he pleases. Chapter 2. Esther becomes queen. But after Ahasuerus' anger had subsided, he began thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree he had made. So his personal attendant suggested, let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. Haggai, the king's initiates in charge of the harem, will see that they are all given beauty treatments. After that, the young woman who most pleases the king will be made queen instead of Vashti. This advice was very appealing to the king, so he put the plan into effect. At that time, there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair. He was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kish and Shammai. His family had among those who, with King Jehoiakim of Judah, had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who was also called Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, was brought to the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed in Haggai's care. Haggai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids, especially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. Esther had not told anyone of her nationality and family background because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. Every day, Mordecai would take a walk near the courtyard of the harem to find out about Esther and what was happening to her. Because each young woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatment, 6 months with oil of myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and ointments. When it's time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem. That evening she was taken to the king's private rooms, and the next morning she was brought to the second harem where the king's wives lived. There she would be under the care of Shashgas, the king's eunuch, in charge of the concubines. She would never go to the king again unless he had especially enjoyed her and requested her by name. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, who was Mordecai's uncle. Mordecai had adopted his younger cousin Esther. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Haggai, the eunuch in charge of the harem. She asked for nothing except what he suggested, and she was admired by everyone who saw her. Esther was taken to King Xerxes at the royal palace in early winter of the seventh year of his reign, and the king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. To celebrate the occasion, he had a great banquet in Esther's honor for all her nobles and officials, declaring a public holiday for the provinces and giving generous gifts to everyone. Even after all the young women had been transferred to the second harem and Mordecai had become a palace official, Esther continued to keep her family background and nationality a secret. She was still following Mordecai's directions, just as she did when she lived in his house, in his home. Mordecai's loyalty to the king. One day, as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bathana and Tarish, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot and gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai credit for the report. When an investigation was made and Mordecai's story was found to be true, the two men were impaled on a sharpened pole that was recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes' reign. Chapter 3. Haman's plot against the Jews. Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by, for so the king had commanded. But Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. So the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why are you disobeying the king's command?" They spoke to him day after day, but still he refuses to comply with the order. So they spoke to Haman about this to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct, since Mordecai had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. He had learned of Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes. So in the month of April, during the 12th year of King Xerxes' reign, lots were cast in Haman's presence. The lots were called Purim to determine the best day and month to take action, and the day selected was March 7, nearly a year later. Then Haman approached King Xerxes and said, "There is a certain race of people scattered throughout all the provinces of your empire who kept themselves scattered from everyone else. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So it is not in the king's interest to let them live. If it pleases the king, issue a decree that they will be destroyed, and I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury. So the king agreed, confirming his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger, giving it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. The king said, "The money and the people are both yours to do with as you see fit." So on April 17th, the king's secretaries were summoned, and a decree was written exactly as Haman dictated. It was sent to the king's highest officers, the governors of the respective provinces, and the nobles of each province in their own scripts and languages. The decree was written in the name of King Ezra and sealed with the king's signet ring. Dispatches were sent by swift messengers into all the provinces of the empire, giving the order that all Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated on a single day. This was scheduled to happen on March 7th of the next year. The property of the Jews would be given to those who killed them. A copy of this decree was to be issued as law in every province and proclaimed to all peoples, so they would be ready to do their duty on the appointed day. At the king's command, the decree went out by swift messengers, and it was also proclaimed in the fortress of Susa. Then the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa fell into confusion. Chapter 4. Mordecai requests Esther's help. When Mordecai learned about all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on burlap and ashes, and went out into the city, crying with a loud and bitter wail. He went as far as the gates of the palace, but no one was allowed to enter the palace gate while wearing clothes of mourning. And as the news of the king's decree reached all the provinces, there was great mourning among the Jews. They fasted, wept, and wailed, and many people lay in burlap and ashes. When Queen Esther's maid Ananias came and told her about Mordecai, she was deeply distressed. She sent clothing to him to replace the burlap, but he refused to. Then Esther sent from Hathach, one of the king's initiates who had been appointed as her attendant. She ordered him to go to Mordecai and find out what was troubling him and why he was in mourning. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the square in front of the palace gates. Mordecai told him the whole story, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai gave Hathach a copy of the decree issued in Susa that called for the death of all Jews. He asked Hathach to show it to Esther and explain the situation to her. He also asked Hathach to direct her to go to the king to beg for mercy and plead for her people. So Hathach returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. Then Esther told Hathach to go back and relay this message to Mordecai. All the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out his gold scepter, and the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days. So Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. Mordecai sent this reply to Esther: "Don't think for a moment that because you are in the palace you will escape when all other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from someplace else. But you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this." Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: "Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not drink or eat for 3 days and night or day. My maids and I will go, and I will do the same. And though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die. So Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. And so that's the end for today's reading. Esther is like one of my favorite female characters, female person, like one of the bravest women in human history. She is so brave. But if it weren't for her uncle or her, I'm not sure how brave she would have been. It's always this verse, Esther chapter 4:14. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. It just never I'm just always amazed by that verse. It's like when we struggle with things, when we are doing whatever, I think a lot of times I relate always to bad things, but this could also be a good thing. If you're being placed in a good place, like for example, Esther, she was the queen. That's a good thing. And I mean, and then it's she was a queen, and then Mordecai asked her if she was put there to be a queen for a time such as this. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing, but realizing that everything happens for a reason. You don't just happen to be in a place spending a year over there or something. You are there for a reason. And so I just pray that we may use the time that God has given us to bring honor and glory to Him, and not living for our selfish gains. And obviously the king is just so messed up in so many ways. So many queens, and then he looks at the woman on the outward appearance instead of inward appearance, and he made a stupid law. I mean, I wouldn't call it stupid, but the law of every man should be, every husband everywhere, wherever their rank. Where is it? That every man should be the ruler of his own home, and should say whatever he pleases. There's nothing wrong with that, except for his motivations. His motivations are not right. His motivations dominance, and that's not what God calls people to do. God did not call men to be dominant over women. He calls them to protect, to care, to provide, not for dominance, control, and all that stuff. Nonsense. And it's and that's the thing, it's when people say isn't there on Bible verses that says the wives should submit to their husbands, and I would say yes, of course, but you have to realize it's not the job of the husband to force their wives to submit to them. The wife has to submit to the husband themselves by their own free will. The job of a husband is to provide a safe space, provide food, provide protection and guidance for his family, so that his wife could close his eyes and able to follow her husband because of her trust. So realizing that men, we have to do a better job of understanding what exactly that we need to do to make sure that our wife has full trust in us, and that she's not always doubting, that she's not should I put my faith in in my husband? What if my husband's doing this and that? It's don't do that. If your wife is thinking like that, then that's your problem. You need to fix something about yourself. And then so I hope that this is helpful, and for women, for ladies, find yourself a husband who loves you dearly, who loves Christ even more, who cares about you, who's willing to protect you, who's willing to sacrifice their own life for you, if that's what it needs to be, to keep you safe and keep the family safe. Don't go find someone who's just, oh my gosh, just so physically attractive all the time, who looks physically strong and all that. Some men could be physically strong but spiritually weak and sickening. And so you always have to look at the people's hearts. The person, the guy that you're interested in right now, you have to look at his heart before you look at their appearance. And that goes for the same for men as well. Our eyes are just so attracted to women's bodies. our eyes are so attracted to men's bodies that sometimes that's all we focus on. We let our emotions drive us instead of some sort of logic, instead of on the guidance of God, saying focus on the heart. See how they act towards other people before you start to be a little bit more committed to this person. In a relationship, it's never about you. It's about the other person. If you can care and love the other person, that shows that you're a better partner than those who just think that all the relationship is all about themselves. That's just so toxic to me. I don't know. I can never understand that. And then I like how Esther is and Mordecai is the thing about their story is that they did not come out and say they're Jewish, right? I mean, Mordecai did, but not Esther. And I felt like that was for a reason that Esther did not say that she's Jewish. Because if she would have said she was Jewish, her whole story could have been different. But she didn't say she's Jewish. She didn't mention her nationality, which is why the king accepted her. And then so that she could work for God within dark places, within the midst of dark people. And so realizing that if you're in a tough situation with people, keep faith with God, keep sticking to God. Sometimes He asks you to work as a secret agent. Just do that. You have to get comfortable with people. You have to gain people's trust and help them to see that you do care about them before you come out with their truths. And so I hope what I shared is helpful. Like I said, there's just so much to it. I barely touched anything, to be honest. But yeah, this book is so good. And I pray that you will just find your own time to read it and just reflect it on yourself. How can we relate to the story of Esther? And then the last thing I want to talk about is Haman. His desire to be respected. This is the whole thing about respect. Is that you do not earn respect. I mean, you don't I don't know how to phrase this. Respect is not given. It is earned. You have to earn the respect of the people. You can't just expect people to respect you for no reason. And this is what Haman is doing. He's just commanding everyone to respect him. He did not try to get to know the people. All he says that you bow down, you show respect to me, all of that. It's Mordecai, who's faithful to God, saying, no, why would I bow down to a mere human? We have to stop expecting people to respect us. If we want people to respect us, then we have to understand that you do not get to tell people to respect you. You have to acknowledge that you are being respected because you earned it, because people gave you their respect. It's not something you can rob from them. And so I hope what I shared is helpful, that you just really think on what I share. It's knowing that you cannot always earn everybody's respect, but realizing that there's a difference between forcing somebody to respect you over earning that respect. So may you guys go and walk with God.